I have a theory that I think it begins to complete the circle of a bunch of different theories. But essentially, the theory of romance, how you need negative interactions in order to signal to the people around you that you have the strength to protect them from themselves, the strength and inclination to protect them from themselves, and also challenge them to become their best self. And so you need the negative interactions. And I think that there are essentially two kinds of ways to approach that negative interaction. There's regular negative reinforcement, which would be having a disagreement, challenging their perceptions somehow, or just being selfish. That's a negative interaction. And that works. But there is another way that I think is sort of the creme de la creme, which is you can be so nice to somebody that you create a debt of kindness. Being so nice to someone that you go above and beyond the normal reciprocity that you expect in a relationship or in a context, so that now you've been so nice to them that if they aren't nice back to you, they would probably feel bad about themselves. And it's not to say that people owe you anything, definitely not. But the idea is that you are playing on their sense of fairness in order to get them to like you, which is so like you go above and beyond. And I think there's actually a sort of minimum delineation that you can feel in people who are confident versus people who are not confident. People who are not confident usually never put out more than a minimum amount of energy in order to do anything, because they are afraid that if they use too much energy, it won't be reciprocated and then they will lose energy. So people who are insecure are usually doing the minimum in essentially all contexts because they're afraid of losing energy if they put out more than the minimum. And what you find in confident people is that is not true. And specifically in doing this behavior where you are trying to win someone's favor by going above and beyond the minimum energy needed for the interaction, so that you create a debt of kindness. And you can do it in a lot of ways, but I think it's kind of hard to describe all the ways you can do this, because I think what I'm leaning towards is calling it optimistic behaviors. For a while, I thought it was creative things, and I think creativity is a big part of it. Creativity describes a big umbrella of types of actions that you could do that would all rise above the minimum you need in order to complete a transaction between two people. And so, I don't know, anything that falls under the umbrella of creativity, being creative, being funny, approaching something from a novel angle. There's a lot of ways of doing it. Being brave, or just like having higher energy than normal. But I think it's not just creativity, it's also just initiative, acts of leadership, acts of kindness. Any of these sort of, it's just like the things you picture when you picture people being their best self. And I think the right way to describe this is essentially what you're doing is you're calling out to someone else's best nature with your best nature. And you're saying, hey, other person's best nature, are you there? And of course, I think everyone's best nature is there all the time, but it doesn't mean that their best nature is going to feel ready and willing to respond. But that's what you're doing, is you're stimulating their best nature to respond. And you'll be like, hey, you want to match my energy. Not just the minimum energy that we need to coexist, but a higher level of energy than that. And I think it's arbitrary. It could be really high. It could be insanely high. I'm not sure it benefits you to put in more energy than the other person can reciprocate. And usually that's kind of immaterial. You never really, you're just trying to connect with people, right? And so you're trying to put out an amount of energy that they can reciprocate, but higher than the minimum, so that there is a debt of kindness. You're trying to encourage them to you more, to enter into a positive synergy that is higher than baseline. And so essentially, I think the right way of thinking about it is just like, actually, I don't know. I have another thought about this. I'll come back with another voice note.